Oh my word, Johnny, what's going on? Champions League quarterfinals. Here we come.
Honestly, it's been a while since we've done stuff like this, put our hearts through it. That was absolutely brutal. Horrible, horrible stuff. Penalty shootouts, not ready for that stuff. So much to talk about, but in general, I'm genuinely, not even joking, we've got to do a pod here. I'm trying to calm down. That was crazy. People are asleep in this country, I mean, kids in bed right now, and I'm shouting down the house, but what can you do? We're through.
What can you do? You always forget that Champions League isn't actually fun at all. All of this nostalgia. Oh, da, da, da. No, that's horrible. It's a horrible competition. The tactics are nasty. It's like Brentford on steroids plus technique. That's what Porto are. I didn't enjoy a single minute of that. And then you end up finding yourself saying, "Oh, they're really good." I don't like celebrating that kind of football, but you do have to respect it. They understand where they are in the football pyramid, and they play a dirty game, and they did a really good job tonight. But oh my god, it's satisfying to win a penalty shootout. I don't know about you. I didn't think we'd win that penalty shootout. Did you have confidence?
As a fan, you're always sitting there going, "Oh no, things will conspire against us. We won't win." But whatever it is, when you think about a Champions League win, it is peppered with pivotal moments. And in those pivotal moments, certain players will naturally step into the spotlight. And I thought that there have been some standout performances throughout the game. And ultimately, there was one standout performance in the penalty shootout, which we will be obviously focusing on today. And something that just felt it felt like a real coming out party for David Raya. When you think about what we've said in recent weeks about he hasn't got that save that you're going to remember him by. He hasn't won us the game. We're not going to be saying that anymore. He got us through today. That was brilliant.
That was brilliant. All right, let's get cracking with the music. Matt's got lost somewhere. Let's turn off the thing. Let's get right into it.
Mirror man, you twist and turn my mind until I don't know who I am. Mirror man.
Good morning and welcome to a new edition of the Arsenal Opinion Podcast, the Champions League edition. The theme tune's been singing in my head all week, but the only thing going through my head over the last 120 minutes was some sort of Freddy Krueger soundtrack because that was nightmarish out there, but we have come out victorious. I'm joined by Johnny Cochran. Matt Candela will be joining at some point. I don't know where he's gone. He's got lost on the subway or something. Johnny, sum up your feelings right now.
I mean, absolutely nerves fried. As you said, Pete, it's quite apt. I mean, I don't know whether I could say I didn't enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed large chunks of this, but it's when it starts getting down into those last moments, and it starts becoming a situation where it feels like, sudden death, essentially. When you've got 20 minutes to go and you think, if they were to score here, and they carry the threat throughout that game, it would almost feel like an instant. Like I didn't feel like we were going to necessarily come back. They had the opportunity for body blows, just like we did. So those were the moments. Those are the moments where it starts becoming like I'm barely enjoying this now. I'm just struggling through it. But for us to come through this, it really feels like it feels like a proving of men out there. You have to do it sometimes. You can't get over the line without those close shaves, without those moments when you prove yourself. So I actually think that this win it counts more as just getting through because it breaks our hoodoo and ultimately it gives confidence to players that previously haven't had it. And in the next round, I don't assume it's going to go like the Porto game. So I think this could be a really, really, huge game to launch us into the next round and hopefully go through then as well.
Yeah, kind of with you on that front. It's nice to get the perceived easy game out the way and find out that actually Champions League is really hard. I almost wonder if a difficult, long, torrid game against Porto kind of sharpens you in games like PSG, Bayern Munich or Barcelona. Like you almost want to get those games out of the way because you know that there's going to be 100% focus in the next round. But that was a torrid time. Matt, your beautiful lights got pinged off. You haven't got it charged. You've been hanging out with the Brooklyn Invincibles, Matt. Are you feeling invincible right now? No, he's gone. He's just gone. He's just gone. All right. Well, while he's fannying around with that, Johnny, I think there's a little tradition on this
Hottest
show.
of takes.
Hottest of takes. Hottest of takes.
The AOP, hottest of takes. Make it spicy.
Johnny Cochran, seeing as it's just me and you, I think we're going to go to you for this week's hottest of takes. Make it spicy.
I'll say this basically. You need, as I said, standout players to step up and show that they are good enough at this level to be, to be the class of the field. And I thought that I'm going to hammer this home. I think it was David Raya's coming out party. I thought he was absolutely excellent all game. It's easy to be talking about him with the penalties, but when you think about, and listen, I got PTSD. I wasn't here on the whistle for the Brentford game, but I have my own, issues with what I saw there. But when you think about what went down that day, and you think about how that played out, I then watched the goalkeeping performance today, where there was a man who was assured every time he got the ball, he looked comfortable. Even the Porto keeper, who'd clearly been told and given instruction to play out as well, just did not have that ease and finesse that David Raya does. And the one thing that, in commentary on TNT, Ali McCoist and the likes were saying, but I'm hearing it in WhatsApp groups as well. Would you take Raya off and put Ramsdale in goal for penalty saves? And that is because in our head, we have this notion that Ramsdale is a shot stopper and Raya is just, a football player. And I think this was a moment where David Raya really announced himself as a top keeper at this point. So I'm saying, for once, we're no longer talking potentially about, two good keepers, but not great keepers. That was a great goalkeeping performance today, and maybe we've got one on our hands. Are you on mute, Pete?
bloody muted myself. All right, I'm going to let Matt get a couple of seconds to get used to being live on the show. My hottest of take is that was this team's first time in the last 16 of the Champions League. There was a little bit of criticism going on around about some of the performances, but you imagine the pressure. You've been dreaming of the Champions League your entire life. You're finally there. The game is evenly poised, and somebody's got the opportunity to step up and be a hero. That was a tough game against a very, very sharp, wily, dogged Porto side. And I felt like momentum after about 80 minutes started to tip a little bit towards Porto. And then when it went to extra time and Pepe was punching the air, someone that's been there, done it 1,000 times, I was like, damn, this is going to be problematic. And then when they got through to the penalty shootout, I was like, game over. Game over. These Porto boys, they think that they've got it wrapped. They've got the prize that they wanted. Take it through to penalties, and then let's do them with experience because we're here every year. So for those boys to get through that game, another clean sheet, to really limit the chances, and then get into that penalty shootout and go 5 for 5, that was absolutely unbelievable. That is elite mentality, and that is why we're in the quarterfinals. And I am absolutely thrilled because honestly, Johnny, I was worried. I was like, I can't be going on this show with Johnny if we go out in last 16. Man's going to be unbearable. All right, Matt, where are you going with your hottest of takes?
Oh, that was so deeply, deeply unpleasant, wasn't it? Can you remember a win that was that ugly? I really can't. And you're just not used to it because you're watching the league games and you just don't have to think about it. The ramifications are less. We're just not used to the Champions League, and suddenly we're thrown into that. So my nerves are all over the place. Did not enjoy it for 1 second. But my God, what character to step up at the end. And there was a moment for me, and it was when Declan Rice stepped up, and I looked and I thought, there is no way that Declan Rice is going to miss this penalty. And that's what we've been missing for years. That certainty in the strength of certain characters. And we've now got it. We've got Kai Havertz. We've got Declan Rice. We've got Bukayo Saka. We've got those players who, when it matters, step up and do not crumble. And one player who we didn't realize we had, but who is proving himself to be in that caliber, is David Raya. It's not, has Aaron Ramsdale ever saved a penalty? Can we remember him ever saving a penalty? It's now moving forward. Oh, David Raya is a penalty expert. And you need to have that in the Champions League. You need to have it. So he was the star of the show. And he is giving me Gilberto Silva vibes. Gilberto Silva came. We didn't realize how good he was until he got injured. And then suddenly it was like, oh, that guy's really good. He keeps everything calm. David Raya is the new Gilberto Silva, because in the last week, we have realized exactly what he's all about. And thank God Arteta saw it. And how stupid are all of us.
Oh, Matt, right out the gates with a spicy take. Absolutely love that. Listen, we got some topics to talk about. I don't know. So we're gonna have to separate church and state a little bit. David Raya and the penalties, but because you two have both talked about Raya a little bit in your hottest of takes, let's just go through this. My first topic today: 5 out of 5. You just don't expect it. Bunch of young kids in the Champions League. You've seen Bukayo Saka miss important penalties in the past. You're not sure what Declan Rice is all about. Martin Odegaard, I don't know. He was getting criticised for not being a big game player a few months ago. Every single one of those penalties was outstanding. Johnny,
Didn't we score 4?
Didn't we score?
Pretty sure we scored 4 because they
We
missed
didn't need
2.
the fifth. We didn't need
We
the
didn't
fifth.
need the 5th. Yeah.
I'm counting extras out here. Let's go.
It's a
He's
5
made
out
an
of
error
5
live on the air.
performance,
4 out of 4 penalties. Oh my god! I think I tweeted that as well. Best deleted. All right, yeah, go for it. We'll change that up, lads. We'll change that up. Forget I ever said that. Anyway, Johnny, you've got 4 penalties to pick from. Which was your favourite and why?
Do you know what it is? So first of all, I mean, there's no other place to start, with this pod, because it feels like a very, very long time ago that we ever had to sit through a meaningful penalty shootout. This isn't the Community Shield and stuff. This really feels like it's era-defining stuff, and people can literally make legacy-defining impacts in penalty shootouts. It's such thin margins, and when you start watching a penalty shootout with your own team, you feel it in a completely different way, and you start reading into things. One of the things that you would start naturally reading into is who's been playing well. Like Odegaard, absolutely outrageous today. We're going to get onto him, I'm sure, but a disgusting performance. So when he steps up, out of I was on edge the whole thing, but I felt like he's gonna knock this in because he's playing well. Kai, I'm just like, don't ruin all your good form, but like he played well, he rolls it in. Declan's well. Saka was the one who I was like, first of all, his first 10 minutes, I was like, he's on it today, and then the rest of the game, he just really disappointed. I just didn't think he could quite get into gear, and so when you've got your natural penalty taker, but he's not actually played well, and you need him to go in and score to kind of crystallise your advantage, because otherwise that Raya save doesn't really count until the next penalty goes in. And Saka to step up, and it really felt like form and, kind of mental, his natural flair, his game didn't seem to be there. And for him to dig in and knock that in, that's when I started to think, wow, actually, we might be able to get it done. Because the likes of Declan, I mean, unbelievable character. So the Saka one was pivotal for me. But obviously, David Raya generated those break moments.
Matt Candela, you have one penalty to choose. What was your favourite penalty and why?
I think it was Odegaard's, because I think we won the toss and we won it at our end. And so you just have to go and set the tone, because the pressure piles on if you're second. And so if you miss that first one, everything changes. But he scored it. He made it happen. And I think after that, we didn't look back, because you've always got that sort of cushion. So for me, he was number one.
I'm going to say Kai Havertz is my penalty. I thought that penalty was naughty. No, he's been bagged on so badly over the season. Not so much in 2024, but like some of the early stuff was really kind of spiteful. Sometimes where you feel like, I feel like people want him to fail. People want this to be a flop because he's got Chelsea baggage. And I just love the way he has just waltzed into our hearts. That penalty felt like Odegaard when he did that little dink. I think the commentators in America called him arrogant. They were like, "There's a little bit of arrogance about this man. Just the swagger, the coolness." I wrote in the week that one of the best features of Havertz is he can do dirty things without any emotion on his face. He gets away with it. And that penalty was a dirty thing, filthy. And he barely even smiled. He just did the dirty and walked off. And you're like, that's our player. That was absolutely fantastic out there. But credit to all the penalties, because I thought everybody was going to miss. There was a reason in my head when they were walking up for them missing. There was a headline in my head that they were going to miss. So for all 4 of those to go in was absolutely magnificent. All right.
It also tells you how fragile things are, that if Kai had missed, suddenly we'd all be like, oh, Kai, he's come from Chelsea. He's this, he's that, it's this. Despite all the good work, it shows just how much harder it is for him to succeed at Arsenal.
We're shit. We are shit as fans. All right, let's talk about David Raya. We've had David Seaman on the podcast, obviously massive friend of the pod. He said it's his favorite podcast to Matt in the green room before he did that little interview. I want to talk about David Raya because he was incredible. He got his hand to 3 of the penalties. Saved 2 of them, and they were not easy saves. Like, these were good penalties. He was at full strength. No one is saying he needs to be a little bit taller today. Those giant hands doing the job. But more broadly, Matt, I want to talk about his game overall, because he is a little bit like David Seaman, because his technique is so good. He doesn't need to make spectacular saves, but he made some good, solid saves tonight, claimed the crosses. His kicking was brave all game, put the Porto keeper in the shade a little bit. I think we said a little bit around December, we got 2 number 2 goalkeepers. I want to ask you, Matt, do you want to revisit that comment and tell us whether you think that is still true?
Arsenal's number 1. That's what it is, right? We realised it on Saturday. I think we realised it earlier. I think we realised it ever since Dubai finished, or even since he signed. But this, in 2024, he has been pretty much perfection. And today was absolute class act. He got his hands to everything. He claimed crosses. Do you remember that moment at the weekend when Aaron Ramsdale came out and did that big punch and sort of half got the ball, half got air, got a bit of a person? David Raya, clean as a whistle, athletic, calm, great distribution. And he does that thing where he pushes out, he just puts his foot on the ball and everything calms down. Everything slows down. We get to reset. And I think you just can't put a price on that. You know, the distribution is top quality. And then it all came to a head. It was like, is he going to deliver when it matters? Yes, he is. There was no histrionics. There was no bouncing up on the line. There was no knocking the crossbar. But those penalties were not bad penalties. They were right in the corner. And a lot of them were the same way. So there was something psychological about the way that he kept going the same way, kept getting hands to it. So that was the moment that David Raya and Arsenal became inextricably bonded. We still talk about David Seaman and the save against Lombardo, against Sampdoria and all those moments. And now Raya's had his moment in the last 16. He's now Arsenal's number 1. And long may it continue.
Johnny, what do you make of David Raya's impact on the Arsenal fan base? Has he won hearts and minds after tonight? Or, like Matt said, did he win hearts and minds before that at the weekend?
I mean, kind of winning more support for your absence is kind of indicative of where Aaron Ramsdale's form has gone. There is no question that there is a clear number 1 now. It's not even close. That debate, there's no point in even talking about it. But the thing that I kind of want to hone in on, and so broadly speaking, you cannot win the Champions League without a really good keeper who can make the difference on its day. You just can't. You can't win it with ordinary keepers. I'm even thinking about the likes of Jerzy Dudek when Liverpool won the Champions League. Not the best keeper in the world. We nearly signed him at one point, I might add. But, you know, he used to be an amazing penalty stopper. Like, you have to have a keeper who, on their day, can be the best player on the pitch. And we've never seen that from Raya. We've just seen a guy who is very competent, you know, and can be very accomplished with his feet. That save, for the first penalty save, is ridiculous. Let's get it right. That's not an ordinary save. It's doing Nightcrawler shit, okay, out of X-Men, teleporting across the goal and getting hands to it. In commentary, they're like, oh, right, he's hit the post. No, he hasn't. Fingertips onto the post. Absolutely. The footballing gods have said, you've got no business getting to that, so we're going to let you off. It's going to bounce off your heels, but it's not going to go back into the goal. because it's a disgusting save. And it's the difference, ultimately. It's about, after that Trossard goal, you're going, who can do something special? And ultimately, we had a lot of players who played well tonight, but the next player who was going to do something special was our goalkeeper in a crunch moment. That was a special save. I want to really hammer that home. It wasn't ordinary. It was very special. And at that point, we said, to reiterate the point I made earlier, we were waiting for those special moments that were going to, be imprinted and implanted in our head moving forward. Well, that absolutely is one. And he's got an opportunity to, make even more of an impression in this competition, because it is absolutely no guts, no glory. That's the nature of the Champions League. And David Raya had the biggest guts around today. It was excellent.
I'm with you on both of those things, guys. I think that David Raya has stepped up to the plate. I think he also suffers. I think he suffered in his early career that like Kai Havertz doesn't have a facial expression, so people assume that he's not that interested. And I think that we went from the most expressive goalkeeper in the league to the least expressive. And when he was doing badly, it kind of irritated you that he didn't look bothered by it. Or he kind of looked like a deer caught in headlights. You could maybe interpret the lack of expression for that, but he's grown with the season. His numbers get better and better. He does the boring things really well, which is why I think sometimes you don't notice how good he is. And we've been waiting for the great saves. But when you're the goalkeeper conceding the least shots in the Premier League by some margin and the lowest quality shots in the league, it's quite difficult to get off big saves. But when you're in a penalty shootout in your first ever Champions League in the last 16 and you pull off flying saves like that, I mean, I don't know whether there's any data to back this, but I don't think keepers make many flying saves in penalty shootouts these days. You don't see the sort of David Seaman hand flying up saves anymore, because the quality of penalties at the highest level is so good. And I was just baffled. Like, to see him covering that much ground, those big hands, I thought it was magnificent. And there's no doubt that he's number one now. And I just hope that he doesn't get injured from now until the end of the season, because you do sense that now, if there is going to be a Rob Holding moment, it's Ramsdale coming in, right? I don't mean to be cruel. But if Ramsdale came into the side for the last 10 games, you'd be a little bit worried. And maybe we didn't think about that earlier on in the season. All right. Let's. Why don't we talk about something fun? I want to talk about the atmosphere at the Emirates. I thought it was fortress-like today. The club has put a lot of effort into getting everybody up for it. I sense a lot of fans were necking beers before the game. The atmosphere was loud. It was rowdy. The fans kept going through the full 120 minutes. We didn't see anybody sneaking out. They wanted to stay right until the end, and they were rewarded. Johnny, what do you make of the fans? You were there at the weekend. Tell us what it felt like.
I was there on the weekend, mate. And when you talk about beers, I had several before I got in there, so I was absolutely flying. Do you know what? I didn't get to mention on the whistle, so I'll just quickly tell you now. When the Kai Havertz goal went in at Brentford, you forget now how VAR can affect things, because I couldn't let myself celebrate in the moment. Everyone around me is going crazy. I'm like, they're going to rule it out. And in the end, once it had been given, I start going crazy. But by then, everyone's like, yeah, mate, it's clearly a goal. But anyway, I digress. The fact is, there's no question that the Emirates atmosphere these days it's legit. It's cut from the cloth. You absolutely need a big home advantage generated by your fan atmosphere to do well in this competition. I think to do well in any big competition anyway, certainly the league, everyone knows that you have to make your home ground a fortress or you just are not going to be successful. But in the Champions League, it's absolutely imperative because you're always on a knife edge and you need to make that home advantage pay. And what we couldn't do was allow the understandable nerves that all of us are feeling. It's completely understandable. I mean, you reiterate, haven't been past this stage in 14 years. That's crazy for a club of our stature. And at some point you start going, is it just going to be the same thing again? Maybe we'll just have to focus on the league. But at the end of the day, the fans kept going to the end. And in those moments, when you look at a game that's been decided by penalties, you cannot tell me that the difference the fans made were the difference today. It was so close that if the fans were quiet, if the fans went up to it, we'd probably go out. we don't score. Or Porto do score. We made it tough for them to be who they were. And that's why, and I thought they played really well, to be honest. I really did. But I think that they had to do so in the face of a fearsome atmosphere. And that is a testament to the fans in the ground. They got their mission and they stepped up and delivered.
Matt Candela, some people don't believe in a big atmosphere, but we saw it with Liverpool at the weekend, and Arsenal fans took a look at that and said, we will have a bit of that. Are we starting to get our reputation back as a club that has a fearsome atmosphere? And do you think the players were enjoying it out there tonight?
I think we were. I mean, before match was unbelievable. I never knew all the lights were on dimmer switches. That moment where it all went dark, and then it was like, it's like being at a concert at Wembley Arena, where suddenly it was like all the flashing lights. It was, oh my God, I've never seen the Emirates like that. I sort of remember them just turning the lights on when it got dark, and now it's like, you know, like a concert arena. So it was amazing. The flags, everything, and we know what Liverpool have done. The amount of times they've gone, needed a big result, the cops got behind them, they've got the result, and so much of it has been placed on that home advantage. So we did it. I thought it was a bit odd because I think the way we played in the first half didn't really encourage the fans in a way. You know, we're quite passive, quite controlled. Felt like that maybe affected the dynamic a bit. But I think as we saw the team struggling late on, as we saw in injury time, they were tired, they were flagging. There was almost like a second wind from the fans where they really got behind the team and really urged them on. And I think that was something that the team really needed. And then when it got to penalties, when you have that moment and you see them come and we're playing them at our end, and you look at that Porto player coming up second, and you're like, you don't want to be there. You do not want to be taking that penalty at this moment in time. And that's when it really matters. So home advantage is the thing. Hopefully we can get the second leg at home in the next round. Is that by they toss a coin, or it's just by the draw?
Is
it goes to a draw? Yeah, it goes to a draw. It's not
the draw.
It's who's drawn first. They like work it out. Yeah. Do you know, on the fans as well, towards the end of the 90 minutes, that was the one time when the fans started to go a bit quiet. And I'm not knocking them. I completely understand it. I went fucking quiet. I was in my living room just being like, oh no, oh no. And the Porto fans, understandably, natural dynamic, the away fans, they're going ballistic. They're making all the noise because they're away. And they knew that they were always going to have to be singing and cheering. And the other aspect is, if there was a moment in this tie where the history of our club was there for all to see, it was towards the end of the 90 minutes, because in that moment, every fan, I think, felt we are one mistake away from just crashing out, and all of these hopes and dreams just disappear. And like you mentioned at the start, Matt, we're not used to playing football really like that. And, you know, you go out to Carling Cup, who cares? The FA Cup early, all right, then we'll focus on the league. Then now we're top of the league, guilty. You know, the Champions League, there's no excuse. Like, this is a big one, and to have it all, obviously, it's that twin dynamic, isn't it? It's so close, you can grab it to be able to get through, but it's so close to just be able to stumble when you crash out and you're hoping you're in next year.
Agree with all of that, guys. It's exciting to watch a game when you've got a mad fan base, and I say it again. It takes. I don't know whether balls, because I don't know who made the decision, but it takes bravery to admit that you've messed something up and to invest in getting the atmosphere back together when a lot of people said it wasn't possible. So kudos to Arsenal, kudos to all the supporters groups, kudos to Ashburton Army, who I think they whip up another tifo before tonight. Didn't see it on the TV.
I think there was a tifo. We had the tifo. We had flags. We had
Portuguese. Fair play to everybody, because everybody has to come together to make that happen, and it is magnificent when you bring the atmosphere and then you deliver a win. Because I was at that Man United game when we all had our little flags. Sad night.
I mean, the one thing as well, I saw Arteta talking to Martin Keown in a pre-match interview, and he had mentioned, you know, Martin Keown basically, you know, explicitly said, how much are you going to need the fans tonight? And he said in a really straightforward way, he's like, listen, you've played. Like, as a player, he's like, you know what it does to you when the fans get up. And so I think this is when you start to get the charm of having a recent ex-player, someone who knows how important it is to bring the fans and bring that cauldron into the playing dynamics. It can't just be, all done with X's and O's. Some of it has to be the passion, the connection with the fans. And that's why Mikel Arteta has been unwavering in that vision of regenerating that connection with the fans, because he knows it's not just, for feel-good factor. It's going to help him get results.
And that sort of rhetoric in the media, and it's a super basic, but when you give fans a role to play in the match day experience, when you're like, listen, you're part of the match setup, and they take it and they roll with it. You're like, I think fans in moments like tonight, they're like, we did play a role, and they certainly did. I mean, getting that young team over the line, magnificent. And so congrats to everybody that was there tonight, and congrats to everybody that had a role to play in that. All right, I don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it, but we're gonna. What did Porto do well tonight, Johnny?
I thought they were very sneaky, really, really good outfit. I think that there's no question in my mind we are the better team overall, and I think there'll be some Arsenal fans coming away from this game probably a little bit more downbeat on us than what they should be. They think that Porto are some B-string outfit in Europe. As I always liken it to other sports, sometimes it's the best way through metaphor of making a point. In MMA, in UFC explicitly, they always say styles make fights. That means you can't just take people's league position and go, oh, top of the Premier League, third in the Portuguese league, that's just going to be a 5-0, 6-0. It doesn't work like that. Porto have played us as an opponent, one of the best I've seen in the last 18 months. They just had some really, and it's worrying because, not really worrying, I'm sure Arteta will adapt, that's his strength, but they found solutions to a lot of the things that we do. They're very compact. When they do a lot of what we do, and they were doing it to us. As soon as they lose the ball, they were hounding to get it back. They had some great outlets in the form of the other Pepe, not the wild orc at the back, who I don't even know, he's in some cryo chamber out of his planet at 41, got a massive gash on his head. But the other Pepe, who's in the middle and like diminutive, he's an absolute lunatic, breaking all the time, wonderful touches. But what they said is we are not going to, beat ourselves. These guys are good. They're going to have to break us down. They defended stoutly. And obviously the goal that they scored in the first leg, yes, self-induced, but was a wonderful finish, to be fair. So I don't look at that and go, oh, we scraped through against Porto. We were always going to have to gut it out in one of the games. And it just so happens that Porto set up against us going, we are not going to give anything cheap away and try and hit people on the counter. And they did it really well. I just think when you look at the teams that have gone through, a lot of the ones that are through are not going to set up like that against us. They're going to go, we think we're better than you. So we're going to try and, if you've got Mbappe there, let him do something. Jude Bellingham, what can he do? Harry Kane, all of these guys. Porto never were like, we've got better players. They were just like, we're just going to win. That's what we're aiming to do. So I think there are other games against better teams, against better players that might actually play into our hands a lot more.
Matt, how does a 41-year-old centre-back reduce us to 0.95 XG and keep some of the fastest players in the Premier League under wraps in the way that he did tonight?
They were streetwise, really streetwise. I think myself included, maybe thought of them as a bit like an Olympiacos, bit of a Europa League team. That sort of level. The kind of fodder that you always come up on top when you play them in a group stage and those sorts of things. But we're a team that hadn't won a knockout game since 2010. So, who are we to be going on like that? Sometimes we think that we are different than who we are. That's who we are. We haven't won a knockout game in Europe, I don't think, or certainly in the Champions League since 2010. So they've got more pedigree than us. They've won the Champions League. They've got Champions League DNA. We haven't. And I think we forget that. We think because we're dominant at home, because we've got the name, the reputation, all of that, that we're just better than them. And I thought they were really impressive. I was really impressed by the fullback, the way they shut down the wingers, Pepe. It was streetwise. But most importantly, the atmosphere was big. It was a big atmosphere, big moment. And from the first minute, they looked calm. They knew exactly what they needed to do. They never looked flustered. It was all part of the game plan. And the game plan worked. I mean, if you offered them penalties at the beginning of the game, I think there'd be a chance they'd take it. I really do. And so right until that moment, I think they were happy. And then we managed to get it over the line. It's those fine divides, but they're a good team, and I think we learned a lot. It was a weird win because I don't really feel euphoric in a way. It felt so ugly, so messy, so like, oh God, are we any good? Can we go further in the tournament? And I really like the way you talked about it with the USC reference, because I think we'll find it easier against certain teams. But it was certainly a wake-up call from finishing the group stages and going, well, the Champions League's easier to win than the Premier League. Maybe,
Shut up.
maybe not, because we've never won it.
Definitely not.
And you know, we just sort of cruised through and we're beating PSV Eindhoven and whatever, and Gabby Jesus was scoring for fun, Trossard and a false nine. It's like, wakey. Knockout stages are different. These players are different. And the pace of the game, I think, is really interesting because the Premier League is a lot faster and it sort of suits us because we're so dynamic. Everything was slower and we sort of struggled with it a little bit. And it was difficult to know whether we played a really good game or we didn't play our game, but we got through.
We did. I thought the referee, by and large, did a pretty good job. I was quite impressed with the way that he was communicating. Didn't get every single decision right, but even when it felt like he got decisions wrong, it felt like he got them wrong, but it was marginal either way. You know, like Kai Havertz pulling the shirt, like he was pulling the shirt, whether it was enough to bring Pepe down or whether Pepe was going down, regardless. And it was a different game because it felt like the ball was in play a lot more. It was almost like Porto had planned for not being able to do exactly the same thing that they did in the last game. Even from corners, it wasn't the same. So I thought they played well. Thought they played to their strengths. I like the way that they were just giving it to the keeper and the keeper wasn't moving the ball about. It was interesting that Arsenal weren't particularly keen on shutting down the goalkeeper. I assume that's because I didn't think he was very good at passing out the back. But yeah, dogged, more experienced than us. I feel like Portuguese teams get coached in the dark arts with a lot more precision than maybe this Arsenal team does. But we stood up to the test. We didn't get goaded into retaliation. It's always easy to kick out and get a red card. The emotion of the game was managed really well, which again is a big improvement on last season. And I guess the biggest improvement is getting through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Like, it's not satisfactory to go out at the quarterfinals of the Champions League, but if you do, it is not a disaster. It's like, okay, well,
I think it's satisfactory. I think if you get to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, there are only 3 games you didn't play, and anything can happen in the Champions League. So,
yeah,
I think it would have been a bit of a disaster to go out in the last 16 because it's like the curse continues. Whereas now, I think if you go out in the quarters, it's like, all right, would have liked more, but we'll take it for first year back.
Yeah, we're treading new ground now, and I do think you guys are making a good point about that. About how we would consider it. I actually think if we had gone out in this round and it had been on penalties, I think a lot of us would have been able to take that on the chin because it's just a lottery. Lots of people could say it shouldn't have got there, but I'm worried if we had not been able to score today, for instance, what that then does to our league form. You know, it's another big game, a big moment, and we couldn't do it. This was huge today. It was massive. And I don't even want to get onto conversations about, oh, now we're out, we get to focus on the league. Don't give me that, okay? We are a big team. We need big trophies. We need to be going for everything. And so I thought it was massive, and I think it will help us, actually, with our league form as well.
Agree. And I think your point earlier, Johnny, like Barcelona are going to try and play us off the pitch. So PSG, like there aren't many teams in the next round that are going to come and shut up shop like that because they won't want to. They will be underestimating us now. Now we flip the table. Teams will want Arsenal. They'll want our immaturity. So interesting pivot there. All right, let's talk. I'm going to try this next headline. Martin Odegaard, because he was good, wasn't he?
He was inspired by Johnny, right? That's where it's all come from.
I mean, when you go back into your kind of, what is your pivot point in time? There's a guy who's struggling to pull the trigger in front of goal. He's looking panicky, taking an extra touch. And someone from a well-known Arsenal podcast was brave enough to stand up and say, don't be fooled by the flicks and the tricks and the magic. We need more from the captain. He's in a pivotal position. And the moment that man said that, Martin Odegaard has been from another planet. Okay, Sublime Guard, I'm not sure that even works. I went for MG, Pete. Let me put that on the ticker.
MG. I mean, we're not winning on these. We're not winning on these, Johnny. So basically, you were Roy Keane telling Cristiano if he wants to progress in his career, he's got to cut out the nonsense step overs. That's basically you to Odegaard. Is that how I'm hearing it? You're the real hero here. Is that
Pretty much, but the problem is you never get thanked. No one ever comes up to me and says, thanks, Johnny, you've turned the season around. They say, why were you having a go at our captain? He's the nuts. You don't know what you don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Because I've G'd him up and now he's looking unbelievable. So, as David Brent said, I want people to go, oh, there goes Johnny Cochran. I must remember to thank him. But they never will. And that's the biggest travesty. So what can I say? He's up. When we talk about him seriously, though, he was unbelievable. I mean, go to Matt first, come back to me, because I've got things to say about this man.
Matt Candela, obviously, majority of this is Johnny's responsibility, but what exactly has changed in his game that has people singing his praises? Because, it was a bit of a rocky start to the season.
I think there's never been any doubt about the technical ability of Martin Odegaard, ever. I think the question was, there are moments that could pass him by. And I think that's the biggest thing that he's corrected. I remember the first time we really saw what Martin Odegaard was about was when we were 3-0 down against West Ham. And he was in his loan spell before we actually signed him. And then suddenly in the second half, he just grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck. And we talk a bit about that, but it's very hard to do. And I think what he's been doing of late is just saying, I'm going to bend this game to my will. I'm going to simply not let anything happen that I do not want to happen. And today he was just everywhere. It's his desire. It's his commitment. It's the fact that he can combine brilliant footwork, brilliant skill, brilliant through balls with just this aggression and passion to make it happen. And there was some question marks. Should he be captain? What about Declan Rice? What about this? But Martin Odegaard is the best captain you could possibly have, because it's not even all the shouting and the ranting and the raving. That's not really his style. It's just purely leading by example. He's another coach on the team. And today I thought he was the one player who played up to his usual level. I just didn't think we were as good as we have been or could be. And I think a lot of the credit goes to Porto for doing that. There was no player where you're like, oh, that was that player at peak form, apart from Martin Odegaard, who I think did everything within his powers to make it happen.
Well, it seems that, Johnny, you have your chance to tell us exactly what Odegaard has taken from your conversation and what he's implemented into his game that has got you dancing around the living room at the moment, because the pivot has been pretty significant, right? I mean, I tell you what it was, Johnny. There was a lot of good underlying numbers, but not a lot of delivery. Like, what's gone on with the delivery? Do you think it's better forward play, or like has he elevated a level, or has everybody just caught up to him?
Well, no, I think there's a lot of players. Look at Saka. All of a sudden, Saka, people going, he should be dropped, all of this stuff. And then he banged 7 in 5 games, you know what I mean? And you're like, there was never any question this guy was class. Just as Matt says about Odegaard, I don't want to be silly here. I honestly think that was one of Martin Odegaard's best ever games for us. I'm talking about a very short list. Maybe top 3, maybe top 5. It's hard to obviously think on the spot about all the great ones. But from a stat sheet that says ultimately only 1 assist out of the game, we've seen games where he scored 2 goals. He set up a load of goals in a game. His influence today was uncanny. I thought he was, without a shadow of a doubt, our best player within the game. Unbelievable. The assist for the goal is piss-taking. It's piss-taking at a high level. And this
Thierry said it was Bergkamp-esque.
Well, of course it is. How often do we say, oh, you can't use the great man's name in vain? I've said it with Vieira and Whitey. No, that was Bergkamp-esque. But Dennis would be proud of that. That would look good in his show reel. It was liberties. And when you think about the nature of the competition we're dealing with, The Champions League is really what it all comes down to. It's about great players having great moments. You can't win it without it. Any successful run, even when Liverpool, skanked one, Chelsea skanked one, it was great players like Didier Drogba in a final just refusing to do it. Steven Gerrard crashing goals in when they should be going out. Remember that one against Olympiacos? They should have been going out. They ended up winning it. You can have tough games against tougher opposition. And I thought the one player, as Matt said, who really stood up and said, no, I am a great player and I've done something special in the game, was Martin taking the piss on the left wing. And that ball, not everyone has that vision. They just simply don't, let alone the outright God-given ability to be able to thread that ball through. It was just the nuts. And as I say, we needed a special moment from a special player. We got it.
Agree with you both. I don't really have much more to add to that. I just love seeing, I think there's an element of Martin Odegaard stepping up. There's an element of the rest of the team getting on the end of those balls and doing something with it. I mean, let's talk, like, Trossard was not having a good patch at that point. And then he gets in the box and he just turns into like Anelka, slides it under the keeper, cool as you like. And I'm starting to feel like Martin Odegaard is sensing that he could be one of the best attacking midfielders in the league. And he has the chance to prove it by taking Arsenal to Champions League final or down to the last day of the season in the Premier League. So very exciting times for Martin Odegaard. Okay, we're gonna get wrapping up after this next section. This is a fun one, guys. We're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Let's just take a moment to lap that up. We've been doing this podcast for a while, and when we started this podcast, we did not believe that we would be back in with a shout in the biggest competition in club football. The quarterfinal pot: Arsenal, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Paris, Real Madrid, and then it could be PSV Dortmund, Inter, or Atletico. Guys, who do we want to... Matt, Johnny, you got one pick. Who do you want in the next round?
PSV.
Okay. Johnny?
I know why you say that, obviously. And if they were to get through, it would be hard not to say, oh, that would be a nice little tie. But when you get to the last 16, when you get to the quarterfinals, you now start going, there's not really any ties that are not going to be tough tests, big ties. I'd take Barcelona. I really would. And I'd take PSG. I think we're going to get PSG or Real Madrid in the next round. I've got a feeling it just feels like Declan is going to have to cross paths with Jude Bellingham this year. I feel like it's written in the stars. That could be really late on. And I also feel that Kylian Mbappe is going to get a run around and there would be a kind of, oh, yeah, you could have come to the Arsenal, but, you're playing. I'll tell you what, I'd fancy us against PSG. I really would. And I'd fancy us against Barcelona. To be honest, and I'd fancy us pretty much, if any team that comes out that isn't Man City and arguably Real Madrid, despite the fact we've got an incredible record against Real Madrid in Europe, they won't fancy it. I think realistically, any team is going to be looking at us and saying, at worst, it's a 50-50 of Arsenal. And, maybe slightly nudging towards City. So give me a glamour tie, Barcelona, any PSG. I think we can knock them out.
City would be a disaster.
City's the only one.
And I think Inter would be not good either.
Well, yeah, clever Italian. Yeah.
Well, it would be like Porto again, wouldn't it? It would be like,
but with
Porto
better
again,
players and more streetwise.
Yeah.
I'd like Barcelona.
Yeah.
I just like, you're coming after our manager. You've come after our players. You've tried to bully us. Well, now the tables have turned. You've got no fight. You can't put a financial lever on the pitch, my friends. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. I actually think that the two teams that would worry me, and not because of form, just because of prestige, Madrid, just because Carlo's got some sort of magical hoodoo vex over the Champions League. But I don't want Manchester City if we get Man City in the final, we'll give it a go. But Man City over two legs plus the game that we've got coming up on, I don't need that.
The winner of that is Liverpool. If Liverpool would be so happy if Man City and Arsenal tied themselves up in a two-legged affair in between league games, my God, that would be like.
Give me a nice little Dortmund.
Look, guys, the chances are, and I know, you can say, well, we'll do it with them. we're going to have to play them. And even if, you know, if we get them at Wembley, there's a good opportunity for them to break our hearts. But even then, I think we've got a great record against them at Wembley, I should say. We beat them in the Community Shield. Wouldn't that be poetic if we were to get them in that kind of
final
setup?
is fine by me. Over 2 legs, I just don't like it. I just don't. Mind you, let's be honest. The only team Pep doesn't want is going to be Arsenal.
100%.
We're the, you know, we can get at them. Liverpool got at them with a very average team at the weekend. Like, we've got Pep's number. We're the only team in the Champions League that does. He will not want us over 2 legs either.
When's the draw? Friday? Is it?
Friday, yeah. But we also get quarterfinals and semi-finals on that day. You
Goes to a
really do
bracket.
get your whole route through to Wembley.
Are we going to do a little? Should we do a little
we
YouTube
have
live?
to.
Yeah,
well, the
we'll
light
do
it
it.
Why
lasts
not?
about 3 hours, doesn't it? The draw.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get that
We'll
organised.
get
Right,
maybe
guys.
an on the draw.
It is very late in the UK. Johnny, thank you for joining through. I mean, it's been a fun 50 minutes. If you're listening to this live, that's because you're a Patreon, and we absolutely love you. Thank you for being an AOP. If you want to be part of that club, it's patreon.com/the Arsenal Opinion. If you're listening to this a little bit later on Apple or Spotify, give us a 5-star review because we love those. And remember, we're up to 60,000 subs on YouTube. So if you like a YouTube channel, you like watching YouTube on TV like I do, sign up to the channel because we dump a bunch of videos out there as well. And just want to say, listen, if you're listening to us at all, thank you for allowing us to be in your ears for 15 minutes. We know that there is some amazing podcasts out there, and the fact that you chose to spend time with us makes us happy. It's a little bit of a break, 19-day gap between the next bunch of games. I tell you what, boys, I said this last week. Thank fuck Chelsea got through in the FA Cup, because we don't get to play them on Saturday. So that's a dream. I wouldn't fancy playing Chelsea after a win, after, you know, doing some extra time today. So we're going to be back. Loads of Patreon stuff, loads of free-to-air stuff. We are going to keep your ears busy over the next few weeks. So on that note, guys, unless you've got anything else to say, thank you, Johnny Cochran. Thank you, Matt Candela. I'm Pedro. This is the Arsenal Opinion. We will speak to you soon. Ciao for now.